on the board of the Bremerton Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you here for our Eggs and Issues. So before we begin, quickly run through the rules. First of all, let you know that there's no videotaping or picture taking during this session. We are capturing it all on tape here. We'll be publishing it on the website of the Chamber, so it'll be displayed for all. Second of all, is the format is that each candidate gets a 3-minute introduction to talk and share with you their background or platform, and then we'll move into questions that you all have generated, of which there's some really good questions in here for our candidates this morning. Today we'll have 1 minute to answer those, and then we'll conclude with a 2-minute summary. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to give you a summary. With that, the candidates were really sharp on our time. You'll know that when you have, for example, in the 1-minute responses, when you have 10 seconds left, the yellow goes up, and then when your time is up, the red goes up. And if you're still talking when the red is up, I will move closer to you until I arrive to kind of, you get the idea. So I don't have a hook anymore. I tried it a few times, but that took it away from me. Also let you know you have challenge cards in front of you, the blue and pink or whatever. But if your opponent says something that you strongly disagree with that you haven't had, if you've already spoken, you may raise a challenge card, and I will take it, and you will have 1 minute to counterpoint your opponent's statement. But then that also grants your opponent to counterpoint 1 minute in response as well. But that way, if something comes up that you think is a complete and total misrepresentation, you have an opportunity to intervene on that. Would like to ask that everyone that we all hold the applause until after everything is all said and done. Also, I want to bring to your attention that if you happen to have one of these in your pocket or purse, please put it on mute. If it goes off during the course of our discussion, like that, if it goes off, I ask that you make a voluntary $20 donation, and this to a local nonprofit, which
Kitsap Rescue Mission.
The Kitsap Rescue Mission, which has done a marvelous job of sheltering people this time of year, which starts with the winter season. So $20, it's voluntary. I'm not going to track you down or anything like that. But I do know it does work because I got one on this 3 weeks ago and ended up paying $20 myself. And everyone will remember that quite clearly, probably forever. So we went through the timekeeping, we went through the questions. For our guests, exits are through that door or through the back, and the bathrooms are down that hall and to the left. With that, I believe we're ready to begin. Frank, you ready to rock and roll?
Yes, sir.
Let's do it. Okay, so our candidates, you get to begin with a 3-minute introduction to introduce yourself to our guests, and we'll start with David, please. And ask that you pull the mic and there you go. That should help everyone.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Dave Daggett, running for the House of Representatives in the 35th District. I'm going to start off by saying thank you for being involved in our political process, especially at 7:30 in the morning. So a little bit about me. I'm married to Janine, who's sitting over here. She's a Lutheran pastor, so we've had 29 good years. I have a son, Jensen. He's 26, he's an electrician. We live on Hartstein Island. We have a long family history here in Washington since the 1800s. And let's see, I started off as an aircraft mechanic and then decided to go back to school. So I got my bachelor's in aeronautics, minor in business, a master of business administration. Started working on my doctorate of business administration at University of Washington, thesis on economic impact of local businesses on the surrounding community. Finished up with a PhD in engineering. After that, taught at California State University. Worked on the Star Wars program for a little while. Then went to work for Rolls-Royce as an engineer, working on environmental technologies, making clean engines. Went to Boeing, spent most of my career there, was a technical fellow, which is kind of like an engineering manager, except you don't have to deal with the paperwork. Retired a few years ago, and just really have gotten involved in politics in the last year and a half. Before that, I was involved in politics through something called Faith Action Network. Also visited our representatives quite a few times, talking about various issues. And then nobody was standing up to run against our Republican incumbent. So I said, well, people need to be given a choice. Do you want the Republican platform or the Democrat platform? And so I said, sure, well, I'll give it a shot. And we must be saying something right because we won the primary. And I think people are wanting to change. And so that's why I'm running. Our platform, maybe I'll talk a little bit more about our platform at the end of the discussion here, where we'll have 2 minutes. So thank you very much for coming, and look forward to chatting about the various issues.
Thank you. And Drew, 3 minutes, please.
Good morning, I'm State Representative Drew McEwen. Thanks for being here this morning. Get you out there in that heat. It's been a pleasure to serve you the last 6 years at Olympia, and I look forward to returning this January. I moved out here in the early 90s, courtesy of the U.S. Navy. I served in the nuclear program, was on submarines out of Bangor, and made Kitsap County my home during those years. And then when I got out of the Navy, went into the business field, and I've been in business for myself since 2001, and been part of the Mason County business community and the Kitsap business community, and that's given me a real unique perspective on what the impacts are in Olympia on local businesses. When you're having to sign the front of a paycheck every 2 weeks for 30-some employees, and you're oftentimes putting your own bills late to make sure that your employees are taken care of, you understand what those impacts are on an immediate basis, that the policies that come from state government. And so I bring that perspective to the table. When I ran in 2012, the 3 main issues that were there, I've had legislation signed into law on all 3 of these, and that was making sure that we have the best K-12 opportunity for our children, that we do what we can to have a strong economy, and that we make sure that state government is accountable with your tax dollars. And again, I've had legislation signed into law in all 3 of those areas, bipartisan legislation. A couple examples is major reform on our high school graduation testing mandates that were very erroneous, and we got that reform done this year. That took a number of years to do, and that was a strong bipartisan effort. I was glad to be the primary sponsor of that bill. On the economic side of things, we've done reforms within labor and industries, had a major piece of legislation signed that helped broaden the opportunities for disabled adults to have employment opportunities within the state. And we've also done reforms within the state VA system that significantly reduced the bureaucratic burden that was there. And then when it comes to your tax dollars, again, making sure that we're always accountable to you and always looking for those efficiencies. And again, that kind of falls with that state VA reform that we did. And we still have work to do. We hear a constant drumbeat out of Olympia for more and more taxes. And I think that's one of the worst things we can do right now is put our foot on the throat of the economy. I look forward to earning your vote and representing you again this January. And again, pleasure to be here this morning. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Okay, Drew, if you hang on to the mic, as David started with the introductions, Drew will start with the first question. And the yellow paddle goes up and you have 10 seconds left. You have 1 minute to answer. First question is, what is your vision for improving the 35th legislative district?
Yeah, I think, a lot of it, we have things that impact us across the state, and also things that are more locally. And when we look at the local area, one of the biggest immediate impacts we can have is the utilization of the capital budget. The dollars that we brought in for Holly Ridge, that was a significant uptick that was needed for their infrastructure. Also, the transportation end of things. We have, obviously Kitsap is very dependent on the ferry system. We've gotten more ferries built, there are more being built, and keeping an eye on that. We have challenges and we have opportunities in this area, and one of those challenges is bringing in new business. So So what is the opportunity there? It's expanding the Belfair sewer into the Port of Bremerton and the City of Bremerton, and we're working on a partnership right now to get that done, which will increase those business opportunities, lead to more jobs, and that is always a positive for any area. Thank you.
All right. David, same question, please.
So a vision is something that's out there. You know, it's not a near-term thing, and it's kind of a lofty goal. And so when I look at, you know, my experience at Boeing, they went to a kind of an outsourcing of a lot of manufacturing and saw the problems that created. So they wanted to bring that back in-house. And at one time, we had an aerospace presence here in the 35th. I would like to say we should get re-engaged with aerospace and high-tech industry to have higher paying jobs than just service type jobs. Another part of my work was to fly an airplane on biofuel, commercial airplane. And we flew that from Seattle to Washington, D.C. And so I'd like to take a look at creating the infrastructure to create biofuel for future aircraft in our industry to complement the timber industry.
Thank you, David. Okay, so and we get the next question then, and this one is drills down a little bit more specific from the vision question. Question is, are there any issues or concerns that are unique to the 35th district? David?
So, as I understand, the transportation is a big issue, especially in South Kitsap County here. It's probably a big issue to Seattle as well, and so that's a common issue. I think one thing that I've heard about from people is they said, you know, we actually have more of our tax dollars going out of the county than coming in from gas tax. And so I think that's an issue we should address. Also because we have the highest, one of the highest homelessness, poverty, and a consistently higher unemployment rate than the rest of the Puget Sound. I think that's something that we need to address as well. And so you can't take Seattle politics and just plop it into a more rural area. We have unique needs and need to address those differently than what Seattle did.
Thank you. Drew, same question.
Thank you, Joe. We do have unique challenges and unique opportunities here in the 35th district, and one of them, one of the challenges we have is that the top-down management approach that we've had with land use regulations. If you have a given business that wants to come in, especially, I can say this a lot about Mason County, and they need more than 5 acres to build, that's tough to do. Because of growth management and other regulations that have been put in place. And so we need to look at how can we maximize the opportunities to ensure that we can attract businesses to relocate here or to expand here. Also with transportation, as David mentioned, that the South Kitsap area, that's a chokehold there. I'm working right now with the U.S. Navy on getting some designations made on that to bring in some federal dollars to help take care of that course chokehold. So we have some challenges, but we also have some opportunities here.
Thank you. So starting with you, Drew, the next question is, speaking of difficult issues, the question from the audience member is, what is the biggest barrier to affordable housing and how would you address it?
Yeah, that is probably one of the great issues of today, isn't it? And again, I go back to some of these land use regulations, and you have some areas in the 35th district where you're going to spend upwards of $30,000 in permit fees before you ever put a shovel in the ground. That does not give you affordable housing. We need to look at how do we streamline these things, make them more efficient, and do it quicker. We also need to, again, look at that Growth Management Act. I advocate for a more local control of things. We also have to look at how we expand multifamily housing, which is sorely lacking. We have another aircraft carrier being relocated here. That's going to bring 5,000 plus families into the area. That's going to create some issues. So multifamily housing is a big part of that. I also continue to work through the capital budget in the Housing Trust Fund for great programs like Habitat for Humanity and taking care of people that have fallen on some hard times. Thank you.
Yes, it's a matter of supply and demand, isn't it? I heard an economist talking the other day, and she reminded me of a story that I heard right after the Great Recession, the crash in 2008. They said, you know, a lot of construction industries are going out of business right now. We're not building houses. So you just wait and see what happens in about 10 years. We're going to have a shortage of housing. Housing prices are going to skyrocket, and people are going to be complaining about where's our affordable housing? What's happened to the cost? So it is indeed part of our supply and demand. It's going to take a while to catch up. And as Drew mentioned, we need to address issues that are making building permits too expensive. Thank you.
And the next question we have is, what will you do to ensure that Washington State residents have access to affordable and comprehensive health care?
So when I'm going around talking with people, that's one of the issues that people are concerned about. What's happening to our health care? Okay, I'm going to sound a little partisan here. The Republicans now have a proposal for a $537 billion cut to Medicare. That's a federal issue, but on the state side, we do have some control for supplemental healthcare issues. And so I'm going to vote to protect our healthcare, and our family is actually using the Affordable Care Act. Without that, we might not have insurance. We were with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and the insurance company said, we're pulling out. I said, well, what are we going to do? Can I pay more? Nope, you're just out of luck. And so, thank you, John McCain. We have insurance now, thanks to Obamacare.
Well, first of all, real quick, address the $537 billion item. That is at the federal level, it's not a state level. That actually, the generation of that came from a press release from the Democrat ranking member on health care, who asserted that this was going to be a proposal. There never was such a proposal, and that press release is the basis for that statement, and it's completely erroneous. But let's look at the state level. And our insurance commissioner has erected barriers to entry for existing insurance companies. And time and time again, every year, we see insurance companies pull out of given counties, and since 2012, I've seen routine increases of 13, 14, 15, 19%. When you lower those, the number of competitors, what happens? Prices go up. We all just agreed on that with housing. And so we need to attract more insurance carriers to the state and not erect false barriers, as the insurance commissioner has done, so that there is adequate competition to help lower prices.
Thank you. All right, Drew, next question is, with the economy getting better and the state budget getting increasingly more funds, what are you going to do to help the counties who are still struggling?
I was a big advocate this last session. I voted against the budget because it spent every last dime with no thought to the future. We are in a tremendous economic boom that has gone on for a number of years now. And the interesting thing with an economic cycle is that there isn't a specific time clock on it. It's not like a football game, it's more like a baseball game. We're probably in the 7th inning. That could happen in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning. Could happen here in the next 2 months, could be another 3 years, we don't know. But at the state level, we've spent every last dime. We in fact rated reserves in our best economic times. So at the end of the day, with the surplus budgets we've had, I was an advocate that let's lower the sales tax, let's do an immediate property tax reduction, but the majority party refused to do so. And I would also advocate that we start sending more dollars back to local communities, especially through programs that are underfunded and over-mandated.
Thank you.
So again, talking with folks to see what their concerns are. one of the big issues I hear from them is property taxes keep going up, and they're maybe on a fixed income, they just can't afford it. And so, yeah, we've kind of filled up the rainy day fund. What can we do to help people that are struggling here? And one thing I'd like to do is to reduce property taxes. Drew said she voted to reduce property taxes. Maybe we need a little fact check, but there was a bill here on State Bill 6614, which reduced our property taxes next year, and at least according to the data I see, that you voted against that. And so I'd like to understand that.
So we'll use that challenge card. Yeah, I voted against that bill because I advocated for the tax reduction to be this year, not next year, to have that immediate impact. And so there wasn't the bill that we were able to get forward to make it happen this year, and that was a stance we took that we should take that bill off the table and have a bill that would have an immediate impact on taxpayers this year and not next year.
Okay, thank you. All right, so do you have a fun point to that, David? Okay, so Drew, next question, please. Regarding school funding, what is your understanding of the reason from the teacher strikes from around the state, and what will you do in the legislature to fix the problems?
Yep, so the legislature, in quote, Solving McCleary, left ambiguity with those dollars going into this school year, and that created some of those situations. And I think a lot of that could have been resolved through the state superintendent of public instruction, the governor's office, and the budget chairs. That was a missed opportunity. And so as we go forward, we need to ensure that dollars are being spent in the best way possible, that we're following the state salary scale. There was some push to do an across the board, have contracts negotiated really at the state level, but then you're giving up that local control, and so there's a balance there that needs to occur. So I think it's a better communication needs to happen, frankly, from the legislature and the governor's office in how we move forward. But clearly it wasn't a perfect fix. I think it was a good fix, but we're seeing some of those issues and we need to continue to resolve them.
So talking with the teachers, asking them why they're upset, they said, well, one of the reasons is because it was $2 billion that was given to teachers that should have, we understood, this is the teacher speaking, that it should have gone to salary increases, and Drew was part of enabling that $2 billion. Thank you, Drew, that was a good thing. I think it wasn't quite followed through completely though, because there generated this misunderstanding. The teachers are thinking, we're going to get a cost of living raise, and some of the inequities are going to be taken care of. And then some school districts decided not to use that for the anticipated wages, and so naturally the teachers were pretty ticked off, and now they're on the picket line. That's what I'm told.
And next question is regarding higher education. Are you in favor of cutting community college tuition to zero? In other words, are you in favor of free community college tuition for the state?
So as I remember, when I was going to community college back in the 70s, it was very affordable. It wasn't zero, but it was very affordable. It's not so affordable now. Some of the money, another question people ask me, doorbelling, is what happened to the lottery money? We understood that was supposed to go to education. Looking at it right now, I understand something like $100 million goes to higher education, but most of it does not go to higher education. So people were expecting the lottery money to go to higher education. I think it should. I'm not sure that it's going to bring down the tuition to zero. I wouldn't advocate for that. but it should go down because education is one of the best investments we can make for our kids to become well-educated and become productive citizens, good tax-paying citizens in the future.
I'm a strong advocate for expanding programs like Running Start. And I know a number of people in high school who simultaneously have graduated with their high school diploma as well as a 2-year degree. And I think that is a big part of the solution to this issue, because the cost to that student and their family is very minimal in order to get those first 2 years of college done. So let's expand that program. We have that in place right now. I would also like to expand that to include technical and trade schools. Why are we limiting it to just the 4-year type path? Not every child is destined for that. My oldest son just got out of the Marine Corps. He is a trades guy. He's gone into a great career with career potential with Sierra Pacific. And I look at those jobs. You look at the aerospace industry. There are opportunities there where we can plug kids in much sooner in the process. So let's expand Running Start. Let's also expand that into the trade and technical field.
Great, thank you. Next question is, how will you promote a business-friendly environment that reflects the concerns and values of the 35th District?
Yeah, I feel like I do that on a daily basis as a fellow business owner, and again, recognizing those issues that come from Olympia, both positive and negative. And it's encouraging the growth of business. I've been a strong advocate from day one on business tax reform. Had a bipartisan bill introduced a couple of years ago that we were able to get to a hearing, and when we start to address some of these issues, we have a strong business climate. But we also have a very difficult climate for new businesses starting out, and one of those is because of our business and occupation tax structure. So I want to look at ways that we can help businesses foster and incubate and get up to that critical mass that's so critical in those first 2 years without having to pay taxes when you're losing money. And I think in the long run we all win from that. And again, go back to some of those land use issues and being able to have the opportunity to expand or grow or build a business, we need to continue to address those issues as well.
Thank you.
So I've had 3 small businesses that I've run, so I too understand the challenges that small businesses face. Also, I have had quite a bit of education in the business field, so I like to consider myself to be friendly to businesses. One of the things I liked was the establishment of the economic opportunity zones to encourage revitalization of our community. I think that's a great idea. I've talked with several companies about their thoughts on B&O. It is a regressive tax. I think it adversely impacts smaller companies more than larger companies. So we need to have a discussion, see if we can come to an agreement with the larger companies who say, no, we don't want B&O reform, and some of the smaller companies that say they do. So this is part of being a representative, is that you listen to a lot of different folks and see if you can come to a consensus on the way forward.
Thank you. So now we have quite a few questions from the audience regarding taxes, so let me try to winnow out a few topics. The first one, specifically this is regarding the economy and growth. Do you support reforming the Growth Management Act?
So we have to look at the specifics as to what you mean by reforming it. I think there are some good things that the Growth Management Act provides us. And so we need to have some control over growth. You can't just go into a community and plop down a big residential community and expect the other taxpayers to pick up the brake. I mentioned one of my thesis at UW was on economic impact to the community of various businesses. Housing had one of the lowest return on investments to the community, especially apartments, because if you have a developer come in and you plop down a bunch of apartments, the rest of the people in the community end up having to pay for increased schools and increased infrastructure. And so the Growth Management Act actually addresses that issue so that the citizens aren't adversely impacted. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I support reforming the Growth Management Act. And to clarify, that doesn't mean scrapping the whole thing. There are positives to it. I think you do have to have a plan of approach and how you develop a community, but those decisions should be made at the local level, and oftentimes they're not. So I envision having a reform of that act that gives local control back to the communities to determine how they see best to grow their area. And at the same time, we need to also look at what, out of the 13 criteria that are in the Growth Management Act, you never know which one a hearing board is most focused on. So you might have addressed 11, 12 of them, but they think this one's the most important, and voila, you lose on the appeal. And that process in and of itself is flawed. And so we need to comprehensively overhaul it, make sure that there is a set path in order to grow and to move forward.
Thank you. So let's move from growth management to aquaculture. How's that for a switch up? What is your view of our shellfish industry, and are we regulating it well enough?
Yeah, I think the shellfish industry is a tremendous part of the economy here, both locally, statewide, and at the national level. The export that we do to Asia is economics 101. When you're bringing dollars in from, especially from a foreign country, that is a tremendous positive economic impact to an area. And so I think that what we've done in the aquaculture industry is if you look at the flow chart to permit a new bed between federal, state, and local, it makes the periodic table of elements look easy. It is incredibly difficult. And that's why we've seen expansion go up to British Columbia and into other areas. Again, I'm all for making sure we have a permit system, but it needs to be efficient, understandable, and predictable. And currently it's not. And I'm proud to have the support of the shellfish industry as we work through those issues and find ways to improve it.
Yes, we live on the seashore too, and see the tremendous increase in shellfish being planted